Okay, so we're good to go. Well, I would just start with a lead-in by saying that my name is Michelle Marino, and I'm here interviewing John J. Becker. Is that right?
John J. Becker.
What's the J stand for?
Joseph.
Joseph, okay. And today's date is Tuesday, February 26th. Is that right?
Right.
2019. So we'll go ahead and get started. And I probably should have said before I turn that on too, if at any point there's a question you don't want to answer, just tell me, or tell me time out, and I can hit pause on the recorders as well, and I'm happy to do that. So we'll get started just sort of easing into your childhood and go chronologically that way. So when and where were you born?
Born right here in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Okay. What's your birth date?
March 26, 1933.
Okay. What were your parents' names?
My father was August Becker, and my mother was Josephine Worley Becker.
Is that W-O-R-L-E-Y?
No, W-E-H-R-L-E.
Oh, Worley. Okay.
Good German name.
Yeah, of course, of course.
My grandfather came from Germany.
Oh, wow. When did he come over?
He came over as a 18 or 19-year-old boy.
Uh-huh.
His whole family moved over.
Wow.
And so he's, the name.
Yeah.
And the Becker name, I don't know much in the Becker lineup other than who my grandparents were, because they were both deceased when I was born.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And and there are no Beckers in the surrounding area that we were related to.
Huh.
Although there are other Beckers in the area, but none of them were technically related. It's closely that anybody knew each other.
Sure. Well, you just sort of answered my next question of where your family's from. So your mother's side came from Germany, right? But you don't have any sense of where the Beckers are from?
Well, I know they came from Germany, but 2 generations earlier.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Well, what were your parents' occupations?
My father was a plasterer,
Okay.
and he plastered many of the buildings in Fort Wayne and elsewhere.
Uh-huh. Okay. Did he work for a company, or was he self-employed?
He worked for many companies.
Uh-huh.
He was the president of the Plasterers Union here in Fort Wayne,
Uh-huh.
and he did the artistic work. You've been to the Embassy Theater?
I haven't.
Oh, okay. Well, up around the
Uh-huh.
main, floor area, that's all his artistic work.
Wow.
They had to make all the pieces and put them on the walls. And he also did the Fort Wayne National Bank building downtown,
Mm-hmm.
and many others, but he even did our house.
Wow. So a wide range of work there.
Yeah.
Did your mother work outside of the home, or what did she do?
She did up until her got married and had
Uh-huh.
family.
Uh-huh.
She was the head of the business department of General Electric here in Fort Wayne.
Yeah.
And she was one of the highest rated women in the company at that time.
Wow. Okay.
I inherited from her.
Of course. So, did you have any siblings then?
I had 5 sisters and 2 brothers, one older and one younger. The older brother died less than a year old. He got pneumonia, and in those days they didn't have all the medicines and things. So I grew up in the middle of a family. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So you fell smack dab in the middle of the...
Well, as middle as you can be for 8.
Yeah, sure, fair enough. And what was the age range of your oldest two?
Let's see, my parents were married in 1925. My first sister was born in 26. I was born in 33, and my youngest sister was born in 41.
Okay. Well, how would you describe your childhood?
Well protected.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, I couldn't do anything without getting in trouble.
Well, you've got a lot of eyes on you.
And too many eyes on me, yeah.
Okay. And where did you grow up in Fort Wayne?
South Fort Wayne, directly south by Harrison Hill Elementary School and St. John the Baptist, where went to kindergarten at Harrison Hill, transferred over to St. John's then, and went to the Catholic grade school.
Okay. Was your family Catholic then?
Yeah.
Presumably? Okay. would you say were the most influential people in your childhood?
Most influential? Probably my parents and neighbors who kept an eye on me, and just generally growing up in that era. Mm-hmm. Of course, I grew up during World War II, and so
Well, I was going to ask you a little bit about that. You were probably about 8 or so when the war started?
Yes, I was 8 when it started.
Do you remember anything about that, or how did the war affect your childhood?
Yeah, the war itself didn't, have any basic effect on me other than I had uncles who were drafted and went off to the service. I had friends, not really my age group, but friends who went to the service.
Uh-huh.
And I finished grade school in '47, and the war had been over for 2 years, and so I'm just a little kid.
Yeah. Do you remember rationing or anything like that?
Yeah, I even have a ration book stamp.
Oh, do you? That's neat. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So it didn't drastically affect your immediate family in any particular way?
Other than sliced meat was so thin you could see both sides of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. Well, what understanding, if any, did you have about your family's politics or your family's political beliefs as a young child?
My mother and father never got involved in any of that. Mm-hmm. My grandfather owned a tavern, and he was involved in both parties because you had to keep the harmony with the police and all that.
Uh-huh. So did you have any sense that they were one political party or the other? Or?
Back then, all Catholics were Democrats, basically, and I was a Democrat until I got involved in politics and with my wife and all. And because of the people that were involved here in the Democratic Party, they pushed us to the Republican Party because we were pro-life and equal rights and all those kind of things. And
you were equal rights or not equal rights?
For equal rights.
For equal rights, okay.
Yeah. Right.
Well, as a child growing up in Indiana, or Fort Wayne in particular, what were your views about the state of Indiana or being a Hoosier? Did you think about that at all?
Not really. My mind was just on having fun and playing with the neighbors, and, until I got into high school, and then I started getting more involved with things and so on. But.
Sure. So you mentioned that you went to elementary at St. John the Baptist, is that right? Okay. Right. Which was a parochial school.
Right.
Where did you go to middle school or junior high and then high school?
Well, in those days it's just 8 grades of elementary and then 4 years of high school.
Okay.
And
so what high school then did you attend?
Central Catholic High School downtown.
Okay. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say it's torn down now.
Yeah. What year did you graduate?
1951.
1951. Okay. How would you describe your experiences in school?
I remember walking into the school for the first time, and a sister who was the principal came up to me and she says, "I know you, John. You had 2 sisters that went through here, and they were good students, and we expect a lot out of you."
What'd you make of that?
I knew I was in trouble.
Yeah.
And I was just an average student. We had a class that we had 400 freshmen. At 8th grade, by the time we graduated, we had 282 graduates out of that. But 40 or 50 of them went across the street to Central High School for vocational classes that we didn't have and so on. So it wasn't like they all dropped out of school. It's just that
moved around a bit.
Moved around.
Sure.
And
did you have a favorite subject in school or involved in extracurriculars?
No, I was involved in athletics and curricular. His favorite subjects were math and sciences.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's why I became a math and science teacher.
Sure. When did you start playing football?
Freshman year.
Freshman year.
Well, actually, I started in the 6th grade.
Uh-huh.
We had elementary teams.
Uh-huh.
We played the other schools in town.
Uh-huh. Did you get involved with other sports, or was football sort of your main one?
I played basketball also.
Uh-huh.
So my freshman year, I went out for the basketball team. And the coach cut me after 2 practices and said, "John, you're too short." And at that time, I was just barely over 5'6".
Yeah.
And then the next year and a half, I grew 6 inches and I was 6 foot tall.
I bet he reconsidered that probably.
Yeah.
So, so where did you go after high school when you graduated?
Well, fortunately, our high school football teams were state champions in football. Of course, that was they didn't have playoffs. They just had the sports writers voted us in. But we opened the season against South Bend, Washington, which was the state champion the year before. And we beat them. And immediately all eyes were on us because we were beating the state champion. And we went 10 games undefeated.
Wow.
And so we were elected as the state champions. And I got an athletic scholarship to Notre Dame. And I went there 1 year. And I saw that Notre Dame was not my social life and that I'd grown up in. My roommate came to the school. His chauffeur brought him. His chauffeur carried his suitcases up for him. And, this wasn't me. So I transferred to Xavier of Ohio for 1 semester. And they didn't want to give me an athletic scholarship, so I said, well, then I can't come. So I came home and worked for 2 years, and during that time I was a construction worker. And from my dad's experience and all, and friends that parents owned construction companies, so I got into that, and then I got drafted in 1953. The group from Fort Wayne ended the Korean War because they knew we were coming.
Good for you guys.
Well, we were in basic training. In the final week of basic training, we had orders to go to San Francisco to get on boats to go to Korea. Well, while we were out there in our last week, they had the ceasefire. So immediately, stop, we don't need more people over here. Excuse me. So, excuse me a minute while I go get a drink.
Go ahead.
Phlegm just got loose. If you want anything to drink or anything, just stop us and we'll get it.
Okay, sure thing. I got some water right here.
Okay, well, so when I was in basic, they said you had experience in engineering, so we're going to put you in the artillery and let you teach the surveying and fire control. And so that's what I did for the remainder of my 2 years. Is acted like a sergeant, but I was only a private. And but that's what got me interested in teaching then.
That's interesting.
So when I came home, I went to Purdue, started here in Fort Wayne when it was downtown, and that's when I got married, and moved down to Purdue then my second year and went out for the football team and got 2 years of scholarship, so I could afford to go there.
So did you play the full last 2 seasons at Purdue?
Well, I was on the team.
Okay, I understand.
But,
So, well, a couple things in there, if we could jump around just a little bit. Were you expecting to get drafted, or did you anticipate that happening, or?
I assisted in it happening because I went down and said, I can't get a good job, I can't do anything. So will you get me on the list and send me in. So that's how I got drafted.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so for the remainder of the time when you were teaching in the Army, were you in San Francisco the whole time, or did you get shipped elsewhere?
Well, I was at Camp Fort Lewis, Washington, the Army base there.
Okay.
And I was there, for almost a year and a half,
Okay.
and that's all I did there.
Sure. So we're then discharged in 1954, or?
50. Well, I went up there in November of '53
Okay.
and got out in '55. I went in on April the 28th of '53 and got out on April the 27th of '55. 2 years to the day.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Now, I feel like I'm probably jumping ahead of myself here, but you mentioned getting married sort of in that time period too. So when and where did you meet your wife or future wife?
She was a Central Catholic student. I recognized her in my freshman year. In fact, I asked who she was. Our senior year, we shared a locker. We didn't have enough lockers for everybody, so we shared lockers. And want to really hear something funny?
I do.
In the junior year at one of the football games, she was inviting people over to her house for her birthday party. And I heard it. So I and two friends went over to her house for the birthday party. Knocked on the door, she opened the door and she says, "I didn't invite you," and closed the door. So 2 weeks later I asked her for a date.
Did she say yes to that one?
Oh yeah.
That's funny.
So through their junior and senior year we dated.
Okay.
Yeah.
And her name was Jean?
Pardon?
Jean was her
Jean.
name? And what was her
Jean.
maiden name?
Bobay, B-O-B-A-Y.
Okay, and is her family from Fort Wayne then, presumably?
Yeah. There were two Bobay brothers that came to Fort Wayne in 1840. And all the Bobays in Allen County are descendants of those two boys.
Okay.
And
And I'm sorry, I missed the date on that, but when did you all get married?
1955, May 14th.
May 14th, 1955. Okay. So you were just getting out of the Army then?
Yeah, in fact, she made all the wedding plans and everything. And of course, we wrote daily, 6 cents for a postage stamp. At least 5 of them a week I'd write,
Wow,
And she wrote me, and we kept in contact.
And what was she doing? Was she still here in Fort Wayne while you were serving?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. She worked as a secretary in an office. And so she enjoyed that.
Yeah, yeah. So, again, I'm jumping around, I apologize. But
Oh, it's good.
back to playing at Purdue, what was it like playing football at Purdue? Who was the coach at the time?
Jack Mollenkoff.
Okay.
And he said, "Why didn't you come here in '51 out of high school?"
Yeah.
He was the coach then there, and I went up to Notre Dame under Frank Leahy. And so,
Yeah, that's the way it works out.
well,
So then, what was your major when you were in college?
well, I started out in engineering.
Okay.
And then I switched over to education, math and chemistry, and so I could become a coach. So I coached for 25 years, football.
Okay. Well, even through college and in the Army in particular, in what ways did your awareness of politics evolve? Did anything change for you at the time?
No, it's just a gradual change. And as I said, my wife twisted my arm to be the political person because of her physical condition. She couldn't put up with the problems and the stress and all, but she could do all the planning and everything.
So together, like a team, really.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay. So you had decided after the Army then that you did want to teach and coach. Where did you get your first job then after you were certified to teach?
At Northside High School here in Fort Wayne.
Okay.
I taught there for 9 years. I was the assistant football coach, and it was we switching over to the junior high school system where it was 844 or 844, and we I was coached football, and that's when I took up refereeing basketball for a little extra money, and be involved and all. But
okay. I thumbed up around here. Did you have? I know you did because you showed me a picture. But when were your children born?
Tim was born. We were married in '55. Tim was born in July the 5th, 1956.
Okay.
My daughter Julia was born October the 5th, 1957.
Okay.
And so
Close order.
they went through Purdue with me.
Did they? So did you live on campus?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Married student apartment.
Well, how did your family then sort of influence your education or your career? I mean, I'm assuming you didn't have a sort of typical college experience if you're taking care of kids at the same time.
Yeah, well, I had two older sisters who both went to college, both up in Minnesota, and I wanted to be a college student, so I came back and did all the things I had to do to keep up and make things available. And of course, in those days, college wasn't that expensive that you could, could afford it.
Yeah. I think I read somewhere that you later went back and got a master's degree. Was that for your teaching master's, or what was that about?
Oh, Indiana teaching license said you had to have 5 years experience and a master's degree to get your life license.
Okay.
And so I went back to Ball State to get my math license because it was much easier just to go 60 miles down to Muncie than it was to go 120 miles over to Lafayette.
Sure.
So I took night classes during the year, and I took one of the quarter system they had at that time down there, and then come home and coach football in August, where otherwise I'd still be in classes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, how then did you become more seriously involved in politics? When did that begin happening?
I became a precinct committeeman for the Republican Party, and did all the legwork of getting people out to vote and voting and getting all that kind of thing. And my wife pushed me to do it because she was involved with the Eagle Forum organization, and they're politically involved, and so that's how we really got going.
So where did Jean's interest come from? Is that something her family had been involved in, or did she just get into it herself?
She just got into it herself. Her parents were very, don't bother us with political stuff.
Yeah, that's funny. So she wasn't following anyone's
footsteps. Well, my parents
there.
were the same way,
Yeah.
They didn't think at all about politics.
And so had she gravitated towards the Republican Party earlier than you, or is that something you kind of came to together?
I guess I tagged along with her, but she's the one that guided us and started us. And so that's where we got going.
Okay. I feel like the answer to this question may just simply be your wife, but what shaped your political outlook?
I guess our religious views.
Okay.
Particularly being pro-life. And she had 2 miscarriages, and that, of course, made us more aware of the child and all. And so it was common.
Was Jean Catholic as well?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess you both are at the Catholic high school, so. Okay. Well, as you initially became involved in politics, even if that's precinct committeeman or what have you, were there specific issues or legislation that you were championing or fighting against even before you got into the legislature?
Nothing particular I got to point out is that it's just the overall view of the Republican Party and the Democrats in Fort Wayne who pushed some things to the extreme that, we can't do that, That's against our faith and against all we believe in.
Okay. Well, what are some examples of that? I mean, you've said that a couple of times that the Democrats were going sort of in a hard direction, at least locally here.
Right.
Where did you see them going?
I don't know if I can point out one or two, but just the overall stand of the Democratic Party here and the Republican Party.
Did you see that was changing from the past, or were just your ideas changing too?
Well, I guess it'd be both, but mainly our ideas were changing, and we just could not get in line with the Democratic Party again.
Okay. And again, just because you've said this a couple times, like specifically in Fort Wayne, were you paying attention to national politics, or were you more just focused on what the Democrats were doing locally?
National projects.
Okay.
Rather than, because so many of my friends who were Democrats were having thoughts too about what the party was doing nationally, and so we joined together.
Okay, so a disconnect between national politics and local politics
right,
is making you and others question what was going on. Okay. So at this time then, who were your national political heroes, if any?
Well, I was a John Kennedy supporter, and I always liked his quotation, "Ask not what your country can do, but what you can do for your country." And this is where I think, the Democrats on the national level also got split up and caused the breakaway. And so it's just a combination.
Okay. Again, as you're sort of getting involved in local politics, or about when did you become a precinct committeeman?
Oh, that would have been probably in the late 70s, early 80s.
Okay. Did you have any state or local politicians that you were campaigning for, that you advocated for or looked up to in the 70s and 80s?
Not particularly,
Okay. Well, what then made you finally decide to run for state government? Or did you have other levels before you went from precinct committeeman to the legislature?
I ran for Allen County Council one time.
Okay.
And of course it's a big, wide area, and my name wasn't that well known in politics. And so I ran twice for two different counts, once for the district seat and once for a general at-large seat. And just then the combination of people that we got involved with and got more and more involved, and I agreed to take over the area to be the precinct committeeman and so on, and get the workers for the party and all that. So it's just you start slow and you get going.
Okay. Well then, what made you decide to finally run for the General Assembly?
Ben Giaquina was the Democrat, and I'm the only one that beat one of the Giaquinas in an election. I beat his dad. I lost to him one time, I won the second time, and I lost the third time. Because it was a strictly Democratic district as it was laid out. It's all central Fort Wayne and southeast Fort Wayne. And but because I was teaching at the Southeast School, and I grew up in the south part of Fort Wayne. A lot of people knew me, and so my name became open and involved, and so I got really involved in it.
Okay. So you beat his father once?
Yeah.
For?
Well, he's the father of Mark and Phil.
Okay.
And Phil's down in the legislature now.
Now, yeah, and his father was been
Right.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So, what did you showed me some of your campaign materials, but what did you emphasize? Why did you want people to vote for you?
One of the big things at that time was they were putting a dump in southeast Fort Wayne, the garbage dump. And that was just lowering all the value of that area. And hey, you can't do that. You gotta take that out to an area where it's not going to tear down the value of all the houses and everything around it.
Sure.
And so that was the biggest thing.
Uh-huh.
And it was less than a half a mile away from the high school, which was a brand new high school. Mm-hmm. And it just, from then on, that area just went downhill, and so it's a hard thing to see, but you gotta stand up and fight for something, I guess, and they did.
Sure, okay. Did you have a particular, for that, what probably would have been 94, when you ran, did you have a particular campaign strategy in terms of getting elected for the House?
Get more votes.
That's the basic goal, yep.
I think I knocked on 2/3 of the doors in the district, and I started, just knocking on doors every weekend, and spend time doing that.
Did your wife organize some of that? I mean, you said she was very heavily involved in this.
Oh yeah, she always helped us with get ready. I suppose I was a rebel rouser because when I was teaching in Fort Wayne at North Side, I was coaching, and the coach's salary at that time was nickels and dimes. For coaching 12 weeks of football, I got $200. That didn't even pay for my coffee.
No way.
So I, along with the other coaches, said, hey, we got to do something. This is ridiculous. I know that teacher salaries are not the highest, but there's no sense in, giving up all your time to do these things if you don't get some award for it. So I worked with the coaches, and we got it to be represented by the Fort Wayne Teachers Association, and they took our proposal to the school board, and we got a $300 raise, more than doubled our pay. And then the following year, the president of the association came down to me and said, would you serve on our salary committee? So I served on the salary committee for 2 years. And the second year, we went on teacher strike to get the same kind of situation for the teacher's salary that we'd gotten for the coaches. And so I was the salary committee chairman the year that Fort Wayne teachers went on strike.
Okay.
And that was 1967.
Wow. So you're getting some involvement that way as well.
So that's how I got my feet wet in the political area, because it was political.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
you had also said, so you taught at North Side, right?
North Side.
For 9 years. Where did you go after that?
Heritage opened.
Okay.
We combined Monroeville and Hogan schools.
Okay.
And so I coached and taught out there for 5 years. And then Harding opened.
Okay.
And I got the head football coaching job at Harding.
Okay.
And so I was involved there for 7 years.
Okay. And
whenever you get your head in the noose and they hang you, you also have to watch your backside. And they didn't fire me from Northside. but they took away all my extracurricular things. That's the reason I went to Heritage. And when I got out to East Allen, the superintendent called me in and we had a nice conversation. I said, hey, I don't look for trouble, but I'm not going to stand around and things are going badly to let it keep going.
And you mean with teaching or with football?
With football.
Yeah.
I mean, with teaching, you're in the classroom
Sure.
and nobody even knows what you're doing in the classroom.
Yeah.
It's a different field, but I enjoyed it, and so the superintendent gave me the head football job over at Harding when it was open, and so I did that then for 7 years.
Okay.
And my principal came to me one time and said, last year you won 7 ball games, and this year you won none. You can't do that. And I said, sir, we have one public junior high feeding Harding High School. All the Fort Wayne schools have 3 junior highs feeding the high school. We just don't have the numbers and the talent. So I said, well, you can fire me now. You can wait and fire me later. Won't make me any difference.
Sure.
Because I say I could win 3 games next year if we're lucky.
Yeah.
We won 4.
It's an improvement.
But they fired me anyway.
So was that your last teaching and coaching at Harding, or did you go elsewhere after that?
I stayed at Harding.
To teach, but you didn't coach anymore?
Right.
Okay. And so when did you retire from teaching?
The year after I got elected,
Okay.
1995.
Okay. Well, I know that you narrowly defeated Ben Giaquinta. Was there a lot of Republicans that were running against each other first?
Oh, well, there were the 2 of us in the primary.
Okay. Who was the other person? Do you remember? It's been a while. I
can't think of his name right now, but anyway, there were just the 2 of us, and he had never done anything before, and he didn't really have a name.
Yeah.
And so I won the primary without a problem.
Sure. Okay. And I know I could look this up too, but at that point, how long had Giaquinta been serving?
Ben had been in for 4 years.
Okay.
And so he and I didn't see eye to eye. The funny thing is that when I first met Ben Giaquinta, his name was Quinn. Hicks and Quinn Real Estate Company. Giaquinta was too long a name and too, controversial. And so, I even razzed him about it. Hey, Ben, I knew you when you were Quinn. When did you change your name?
What made you decide to run for a House seat as opposed to the Senate?
It's a smaller district, so you are easier to get acquainted, and you really have to have a known name in the Senate because it's a Senate seat. It takes up usually 2 or 3 full House areas, and so you really have a chore to do.
Yeah, so you felt it was more manageable to start with the House. Okay.
Right. And who I would have had to run against to defeat to get up into that.
Sure. Okay. Well, what was most important to you as a candidate when you were starting your campaign to run for the House seat?
Who or what was that?
What was most important to you? Was there? I mean, you mentioned the dump. Is that kind of what you ran the platform on, or?
Right. The dump was one of the main issues that I ran on.
Okay. Well, how did you get that message out to the public? You mentioned going door to door, but did you have other campaign materials, or?
Well, the mayor of Fort Wayne didn't like the dump either, so I got him, and he was a Democrat. And so the 2 of us would talk about it together, and so it was how a lot of it was done.
Okay. What was election day like for you?
Well, as I did all the work myself, putting the signs out and all that kind of stuff, you know, and then going from pole to pole and shaking hands with people to be sure and vote for me and so on. And then my campaign manager, who was a House member the year before but wasn't running again, he advised my wife and I on what to do and everything. And when I closed the polls on election day, started picking up all my signs, I could feel that, you know, it was a very tight race. And when they started giving the results through the evening, he was always ahead of me. And so I was out picking up the polling signs, and my Mitch, my friend, called and said, "Hey, I got word from the election board that you're beaten, Ben." And so I started going around and finishing my jobs, and the next day it was still undecided. And, you know, and so when it finally came out that I won by 6 votes, he immediately challenged and wanted a recount. So we had a recount, and he won by 6 or 7 votes. And so the Republican Party pushed me to go all the way to the state for a recount, and I won on the 3rd recount.
Wow. Did you anticipate it being such a close race?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you kind of knew.
Even old friends from where I grew up in the south end of town said, "We'd like to vote for you, but you're a Republican and we're Democrats."
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you know.
Yeah.
No.
So I guess, like, normally you would know by the end of the day who had won. So did you anticipate it dragging out, or did you think, well, tomorrow morning it'll be settled?
Well, yeah, I thought, you know, when we heard the first results,
Yeah.
but when there's only a 6-count difference, you know, immediately everybody says recount.
Yeah.
And the funniest thing is that my own precinct, they recounted it. They'd made an error in the tally, and I got 6 votes out of that revote tally in my own precinct.
Yeah. That's funny. So how long did that drag out then?
Until December.
Wow.
And so I was, you know, pins and needles. Am I going to go back to teaching after Christmas, or am I going to go down to...
Yeah. Well, and how did you work that out with your school? Were you going to take a
I
semester off?
Take a, you know, I don't know, they call it not sick leave, but for political purpose, you know, you get approved to do that. And in fact, I had things all laid out for my substitute teachers on how to finish the semester, and of course that's in late January.
Right.
And so, you know, I come back to work with the substitutes and weekends.
Wow. So when you finally got the official word that you had won, I think I read somewhere, had you already been sworn in as that was still ongoing, or no?
No, we didn't get sworn in until, well,
because usually
they had an organization meeting in November, but I wasn't officially a member then. I attended, but I wasn't sworn in.
So you did go, but it wasn't official. Okay. And then to jump back, you had said there was a former member of the House that had given advice to you and your wife. Who was that?
Mitch Harper.
Okay, Mitch Harper. Okay. So you go to organization day, you finally find out in December that you won the seat by a handful of votes. What did you find, or what were you thinking as you actually walked into the State House that first day in January?
No, I was just, you know, flabbergasted by what was going on, because I was just a little pin in the whole thing, and fact, on the first day of being down there, I was put on the education committee as vice chair. And the chairman came up to me and he said, John, I have a bill and I have to hand over the gavel to you to run the meeting. And so I said, oh, okay. And so we get into the meeting and he calls it to order and he said, the first bill is mine and I'm turning the gavel over to John Becker, the vice chairman. And so he handed it to me and I proceeded to follow the rules and regulations as we went through it. And then that afternoon we had a party meeting and we were told, now be ready to do these jobs and we're going to have a meeting for all you new freshmen on how to conduct business meeting. I said, it's a little late. Yeah. And everybody laughed.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, how did you get the vice chair position right as you were coming in? Because you had been a teacher, or?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
Because the chairman was not a teacher.
Okay.
Okay, and there's only one other teacher, I think, on the committee. And so, it's just a matter of, here you are,
Yeah, getting your feet wet right away. So, well, how then did you learn the ins and outs of state politics?
Well, a lot of it is just being willing to listen and move forward with whatever the party line is that you're trying to build up. Because at that time, it's just a matter of Republican versus Democrats. You want to do it this way, but we want to do it this way, and so you have to do all the bargaining to get things done.
Okay. Did you have any political mentors as you sort of settled into the General Assembly?
Not really, no.
Okay. Well, obviously at this point you're sort of firm Republican, but you ran on the Republican ticket. What did the Republican Party stand for, in your opinion, during that time, mid-90s?
I don't know whether I can voice my thoughts on that very well without giving it some really long thought, but
it's okay.
It's the party is has basic ideas of how we should tax people, who you should tax and how much, and so on. So that is one of the big things. You don't want to overtax, but you don't want to not be able to do things.
Right.
So you have to have some taxes.
Sure.
And so that, I think that was the biggest issue that we fought over.
Okay. How did you know the needs and wants of your constituents then?
Well, I held a couple of meetings, down, at various locations in the area. At the high school, there we got the room and got the people to come in, and we met at other places, churches or wherever in the area, and announced that we were going to be there and what we wanted to talk about, and if you have any questions, bring them to us, and we will, help take care of the things that you need to have done.
Okay. Did people write you letters or call you about issues, or?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All the time I get letters and so on, and I always give it to my secretary.
That's funny. You had mentioned earlier too that you and your wife went down to Indianapolis. Where did you stay, or how did that work?
There's an apartment complex just one block north and west of the Capitol building.
Okay.
And we got a room in there, and there were probably half a dozen legislators in there. it was ideal for couples to be there because some of the guys, would get a motel room and their parents or wife and family didn't come down, so they could stay in the room. But we wanted to be relaxed and have it there.
So obviously, with the diary you showed me, your wife kept really good track of what was going on. How did she mingle with other people? What was it like for her?
She enjoyed it.
Did she?
She really enjoyed it, and she worked with, like I said, she was a member of Eagle Forum, and the state president the year before we went down, and she gave it up in order to have more time and not being crisscrossing with all the things.
Sure.
And so, she even held meetings in our apartment.
Wow. She was busy, certainly.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. As you read through that, you'll see she was really involved.
I think I had read at some point there was like a legislators' wives club or something like that. Was that still around when you were in there?
I don't know if there was a legislators' wives club, but the wives of legislators got together for a luncheon and did things, together.
So there was interaction.
Yeah,
there
there was
with other
interaction.
spouses. Okay. So you were just talking a little bit about how you knew the needs and wants of your constituents. They would call or send letters that you would then give to your secretary and other things. But how did you communicate and interact with them? Like when the session was over, you held some meetings, but were there other ways that you communicated with them?
Not that I could say that I did specifically to do it, no.
Okay. Do you remember the first bill you sponsored?
Actually, I did not sponsor a bill of my own. I got a Senate bill, and the sponsor of it asked me to carry it in the House, and I did. That was the Senate bill from John Sinks.
Okay.
And
was that the one that went through then?
Yeah.
And what issue was that around, or what was the law about?
I have to get it to read it.
I can look at that later.
I mean, that's 25 years ago.
Yes, certainly. Well, I know that, I think maybe both in the first and second session at least, but you were involved in educational testing issues, like trying to get rid of I-STEP or change.
We were just putting I-STEP in.
Okay.
Yeah. Making requirement that the schools, test to make sure that the students knew a certain level of all subjects. Mathematics, you can do level of math at different things. When you got social studies, history, where do you take, in one year, even in our schools, the junior year you have U.S. history, and the senior year you have government and sociology classes, which they considered the equivalent. But freshman and sophomore years, you could have any century of history, and it's hard to test that. But you can, with math, 2 + 2 = 4, no matter what level you're at.
Right. I'm assuming you got involved in those issues because of your background as a teacher. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, okay. And it seems like, and I know this was 25 years ago, so if you don't remember, please just let me know. But it sounded like there was another test called IPASS, maybe, that people were trying to put in. Do you remember anything about that?
Well, they just gave it a different names because of the broadness of it and so on. But it's all been the basic mathematics, the basic history, and the basic other things that were thrown in, and it's just a matter of who organized the test and so on. It was just another name for the same thing.
Okay, so you were more involved in just trying to figure out what would be appropriate testing or what you thought we should do throughout the state?
Yeah, particularly you know, in the social studies, we would say we're just going to do a generalization of the U.S. history, and but with math, you know, you could say this is level general math, algebra, and because most students in high school take at least general math and one semester of algebra at that time, and so, you know, you could do that easier.
Yeah, okay. I also, from my research, understood that you were involved somehow in a lawsuit that was suing the Department of Education related to some of this testing. Do you remember what that was about?
No, I don't remember a lawsuit relating to it. It was just discussion going on back and forth, but no lawsuits.
No, okay. Well, can you tell me a little bit more about the regular interaction amongst assembly members, both formal or informal? How did you get to know your colleagues?
Well, one nice thing is 3 out of 5 days a week they have luncheons. And some organizations pay for it. Yeah. So you go with them and you eat and you talk, and there's general conversation about the bills or what we're working on and so on. And it's, you know, you just bump elbows so much that you're constantly involved with them. Yeah.
So you felt like you're talking about issues probably when you're on the floor and having sort of formal committee meetings, but that also transpires outside of the chambers. Okay.
You know, when I was there, we had like 20 freshmen, and so, you know, you were all sharing things with each other and talking constantly about the bills that they're working on, or their committee meeting they were in, and what involved, and let us know what you think we should do is vote for it, because there is no way that you can know all the bills and all the information, although I, quote, read every bill that went through the education committee, and I read all the bills that I could, but I couldn't do them all, or you'd never get sleep.
Right. Okay. What were interactions like between the majority and the minority parties, between the Republicans and the Democrats?
It wasn't that big a difference between them, and so you had to go in and discuss things with them to know what their view was on a particular issue, particularly if one of the Democrats on a committee with me, I'd ask him, now, what is it you really want out of this bill, and you know, can you explain it to me in detail so that I don't have to read and reread the bill. And as I go through it, then I would have their viewpoint. And, you know, they all shared their information with you, you know, all the time.
Sure. So did you feel like you were kind of forced to work together a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. What differences, if any, were there between the members of the House and the Senate?
I didn't know that many of the senators. I knew the ones from Allen County and surrounding area, but the rest of them I really didn't get to know very well unless they were on a committee with me. But we were, you know, we didn't have intermixing of House and Senate so much as we just have putting together a group for the House in order to have committees.
So even when you're going socializing or going to the luncheons, it was still pretty parceled out between House members together and senators together?
Yeah.
Do you remember what your relationship was like with your seatmate?
What was that again? Your
relationship like with your seatmate, who you sat next to?
Oh, yeah, well, the two directly to my right were two Allen County Republicans, Phyllis Pond and Gloria Gagline, and they were my mothers.
So they took care of you
They
while you were
took
there.
care of me.
Yeah, that's funny. So you had some familiarity with them
Yeah,
too?
right.
Okay.
Of course, all the House members are divided on Republicans on one side and Democrats on the other, so we were right among all the Republicans, and being that close to those two and talking constantly, you know. Phyllis Pond was a teacher, elementary school teacher, in East Allen, where I was a high school teacher.
Okay.
So we had a lot of things
I
to
bet,
really
yeah.
talk about.
Sure. Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about the process of generating a bill? How did that transpire if you wanted to put forth legislation or sponsor a bill or?
Well, most bills are written by organizations, like the Chamber of Commerce or somebody, you know. They want something for the whole state, but they gotta have a bill to pass. So they get the information and then they share it with you and say, would you be a sponsor on this bill? And one bill that I agreed to help sponsor, I sat down with the group and their attorney and discussed what it should be, and then they sent it to the legislative committee or the, what is it? It's where who writes the actual
Legislative
bill.
Services Agency?
Yeah, right, yeah.
Okay.
And so, you know, you talk to them about what you think it should have, and the people that were pushing you sit with you and tell you their viewpoints, so it comes out as one's corrected, and so you can, you know, take the bill to the floor.
Okay. Well, how was legislative business conducted outside of formal votes or committee meetings? Did you have to say, once you had a bill in place, how did you get people to support it or to get the word out about what it was about?
I don't recall any particular thing other than, you know, you have your bill written, and then you talk to the people on your committee about the bill, and then you share that information with others, House Republicans and House Democrats, to try and convince them that this is the way the bill should be handled and what it should do. And
So did you have to sort of go around explaining that to people, or would it just be like you would present it formally in front of the caucus, or?
just present it at the caucus or
Okay.
discuss it at the caucus.
Yeah.
And like I say, I only got involved with one bill that was my own bill, and then with John Sinks's bill that came over, and
Right.
I did it all arm twisting. You know, this is what we've got through the Senate, and this is the House bill, and we need to get it done this way. So, you know, and one guy, I swear, he just tried to antagonize you.
There's always one of them, at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
So did you have to really work hard to get people on your side, or did you feel like once you explained it, people would be like, oh, you know, kind of go with the flow?
Well, most of them went with the flow after you got to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, but, I remember, you know, on my own bill when I was presenting it to the caucus, I said, now this is what the people tell me they need to have in order to conduct business and so on. And this one guy, you know, he always had this little tidbit about, well, you sure that's what they really want?
And do you recall what that bill was?
Not right off.
No, okay. I can look that stuff up. Did you end up being able to advocate for not having the dump once you got into the legislature?
Well, that wasn't a state problem. That was a local problem.
Okay.
But that, you know, we can't write a bill that covers all the states, you know.
Right.
So it was a local problem.
So did that help you get into the legislature, sort of campaigning on that issue, or was that just something that spurred you into
That
getting
spurred
involved?
me into it and then got it going.
Okay, gotcha. Did you have a sense of how people would vote on a bill prior to the voting actually having taken place?
You knew, let's say 90% of the people were going to vote, how they would vote, but then there are always a few that,
Yeah.
don't agree with you, even if you say it's chocolate and they want to say, it's just brown stuff.
Yeah. So was there a lot of, even particularly when you're in either committee meetings or maybe even in the caucus, like internal disagreements that you all would have to hash out?
Oh yeah, in the caucus we did. We had good debate a lot of times on various things.
So what would that look like? What was the atmosphere like when you would go to caucus?
It was, very friendly usually, but then, like I say, there's some people who just did not agree with you. Why you have that many people?
Yeah.
You only need one more than half.
Right. So then when you were having those debates, is the ultimate goal to get everybody on the same side so then you could present a unified front against Democrats, or?
Well, that's when you, in your discussion, party discussion, you get everything ironed out the best you can, and then you try to go from there. And, I remember that one time on my bill, the person came to me and said, I'm going to present a change in the bill. Here's a copy of what I'm going to present. And I looked it over and I said, that's going to ruin the bill if you do that. And he says, well, that's what the people that I'm working with think needs to be done. I said, well, we'll have to see then how the rest of the party agrees with you or me on that.
Yeah. And so then you'd have to hash that out amongst each other. Did any of those, for the most part, it seems like it was good-hearted debate, but did any of that conflict ever spill out of there? I mean, did people get heated and then hold grudges, or?
No, I never felt any of that, no.
Okay.
No.
All right. During your tenure, what roles did party leadership play?
Well, they put people on committees to push a particular issue that they are for, or they won't bring the bill up. There's all kinds of things that, I mean, there's 500 bills that come up and they don't all get a hearing, they don't get out of committee, and of course the head of the party tells the committee head, we don't want to hear your bill because we think it's just going to cause trouble, and now you get it worked out beforehand, with a new version or something we'll consider, but we were not considering as it stands now.
So the party leadership has influence in the committees to say, kill this bill or modify it and maybe we'll send it through. So that's kind of how that goes. Okay. And I think, when you were in session, that was the first time in 8 years or so that Republicans had full control.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously you weren't in there before, but was that a sort of unique opportunity for you all to sort of push forth your agenda, or, certain things that you all wanted to get through that hadn't or had been stalled out for a while?
I think everything moved along pretty evenly without big fights. And some bills would cause nothing but a fight, and those would get put aside.
Yeah.
But others, you can't get all 500 bills through in a short session.
Right. It's a lot of bills.
Yeah.
What would you say the public, the general public here in Indiana, what do we not know about the Indiana General Assembly or how it operates?
I don't know whether I can give an example, but you know, it's we didn't have gambling before that, and there were groups that wanted gambling, you know, and myself, I don't think I bought 3 gambling tickets even to this day, because I don't think that's how the state should get its money. You know, because the poor people who buy tickets are the poor people that don't have the money to buy tickets, you know. And being a math person, probability, I know the possibility of you winning is very slim. And yeah, somebody's gonna win, but you know, there's millions of people buying tickets and only one person's gonna be a big winner.
Sure. So with that example, do you feel like there's just lots of issues that are sort of hashed out that people don't know the history behind, or?
Yeah, I think a lot of people who don't follow the politics going on constantly don't really understand why they do it this way or that way. You know, it's just a matter. We have, quote, laws that should be taken off of the books because we're no longer a horse and buggy.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, right. So things just left there for a while. Well, how did your legislative service affect your family?
Well, my children graduated in the 1980s, 70s to 80, and I didn't go on until 94. So, you know, I had grandchildren who'd come down to see Grandpa, you know, and thought it was a thrill.
Oh, I bet. I bet.
Yeah.
So they were generally out of the house and had
Yeah.
families of their own.
It
So.
didn't affect them at all.
What about your wife?
Oh, she ate it up.
Yeah.
She really enjoyed it, you know.
Do you recall, or what would you say were the most controversial legislative issues during your time in office?
I can't pick any one big one out, you know. A lot of it is just smoothing things out. It's not new mountains that we're climbing all the time. It's just little hills and things that we're changing. We're not.
Okay. Do you recall if there was, you know, whether it was the bill you put forth or other things that you sponsored, is there a particular piece of legislation that you worked hardest on or was most difficult for you?
No, because I didn't have any agenda particularly that I was trying to push to get through. It's just, you know, join in where I could and smooth out the best I could.
Yeah. Okay. What was your proudest moment as a legislator?
I guess when I got the John Sinks bill through the House and the gang all signed my copy of the bill.
You felt like you had accomplished something there? Okay.
And then I also enjoyed when I had several people come down to be recognized by the legislature, and you just get to introduce them and so on. It was nice.
Yeah. What was committee work like? I mean, you shared the story of being dumped right into that from the get-go, but I know you were on education, and then I think I saw natural resources, aged and aging, and maybe families, children, and human affairs.
Yeah. Age and aging, we really didn't. I think we had 2 committee meetings. You know, there wasn't any big bills or anything to do. Okay. Natural resources, of course, was just taking care of our state parks and so on. And that was more formal, just to get things up to grade. Okay. But the education committee, we had several debatable bills, what we should do, and particularly since we were talking about the predecessor to I-STEP, and I stood on how I stood on it, and being a teacher for those years, and so I tried to voice my opinion and, without upsetting everybody.
Yeah. Did you feel most comfortable on the education committee and to sort of be a leader of that because of your background?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And I know that party leadership appoints you to committee work, is that right?
Right, yeah.
So obviously education is a good fit. Did you have any sense of why you were placed on any of the others, or was it just...
I think they went down to the, here's a committee, you go this one.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Were there any major hurdles that you had to overcome during your time as a House member?
Not that if I stayed on longer, maybe.
Yeah, sure. Well, what, in your opinion, is the most important work of the Indiana General Assembly? What's the most important thing that they do?
That all bills treat people equally, and you can't have special rules for one group and a different set of rules for another. You all have to have the same set of rules, and they have to be general in such a way that it affects the whole state that way. And so you got to evaluate each one as to what it says and who it pertains to. That's.
And so you see that as the goal of the General Assembly, to try to make sure that's the intent of legislation?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about then the 1996 election, because Gia Quinta runs again against you, right?
Right.
Okay. So what was your campaign strategy like to get reelected, or did you do the same things, or?
Well, I basically did the same thing, because it was mainly getting recognition of me and the people that we were trying to help and what we were trying to accomplish, and so it's,
Did you do the same, like go door to door, or did you feel like you were better well known this time?
No, I went door to door, and I would spend 3 to 5 hours every Saturday and Sunday out knocking on doors, attending neighborhood association meetings, and just keeping my name and interest out in front of the people, and let them know who I was and so on.
Sure. Okay. Well, what was the outcome of that election then?
Oh, he beat me by a couple hundred votes.
Yeah, still close.
I didn't challenge him.
Yeah, with that. How did you feel about that? I mean, had you wanted to continue for a long time, or was this, okay, let's move on, or?
Well, I wanted to, feel like I could do a good job for the people, and wanted to be involved. I didn't sit down and cry, because, it wasn't my goal all along to become a representative. That was something that just gradually built.
Sure.
And got involved with it and did all the things that were necessary to do it.
How did your wife respond?
Oh, she took it very seriously, and she, thought we were doing a good job for the people. And she's sorry that we didn't win and go back again, but you do what you can do and when you can do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, how would you summarize, maybe you just did this, but how would you summarize your time as a state legislator?
Just the daily routine of doing things, and you weren't building new barriers, or you weren't tearing down old barriers. You were just trying to do the best you could to move the bills through and work with the people. Fun, but it wasn't my life that I was going to go away because I didn't get reelected.
Right. You were able to move forward.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a favorite story or anecdote during your time in the General Assembly?
Not that I could think of right now, but I'd have to make some things up.
Sure.
Yeah.
Were there any lessons you learned about government or humanity or anything?
Well, when I was in the legislature, I got a call from St. Francis College saying they had a course they were teaching, and it was in local government. Would I be willing to teach the course? And I said, yeah, do that.
Yeah.
Tell me what I'm covering on, they tell me, and I taught one semester of local government.
That's fun. So drawn mostly on your experiences of how that worked?
Right.
Well, that's neat.
And we talked about the city council and the county council, school boards, and the state election, but we did the other three as our primary part of the class.
Sure.
And,
That's neat.
so I made everybody go attend one of each of those meetings and write a report, and one page report on what you did there and what went on.
Yeah. Do you feel like, well, that's interesting. Do you feel like either when you were serving or even today that most people know how those things work?
Not really how they work, no. No. Only what they see on TV.
Well, after your defeat then for what would have been the 1996 election, did you have any interest in trying to run again in the future?
No.
No. Okay. I do know, and we talked about this briefly too, that you campaigned for other politicians.
Oh, yeah.
How did you get involved in campaign work?
Well, I had a friend who was running for state representative, and I sat down with him and told him what to expect if he got elected, and what he needed to do to get elected. And we had a good discussion several times. We meet with over coffee and so on, and he appreciated my time that I spent with him, and I, just enjoyed doing that. And I said, no, I'll help you. I'm not going to run your campaign and have to do all the work.
Sure. So you still kind of stayed somewhat in the fringes of other people's campaigns and things like that. Okay. Well, given that you've lived in Fort Wayne for most of your life and born and raised here, but also been around the state, how would you say the state has changed over the course of your lifetime? Or do you think it has changed?
I'm not sure I can point to anything that changed over the state, other than the fact that because the nature of the communities change, the industries and everything else that affects it, but it's a gradual change that affects everybody, and I don't think it's any drastic changes.
Okay. I don't know how closely you've stayed involved or followed up with the Indiana General Assembly, but do you think the General Assembly has changed since you served in the mid-90s?
I've only visited down there a few times, went down to several meetings and so on, but I don't think it's changed that much.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What, if any, enduring qualities do Hoosiers have or hold dear? Is there anything that makes Hoosiers unique?
I have a sister who lives up in Michigan. I have a sister who lives out in California, and I don't see any difference.
Okay.
Them out there, me here.
Okay. Well, I think that really takes us through a majority of my questions here. Is there anything I haven't asked that you would want to talk about, or any experiences that we haven't covered?
No, I think we covered pretty good.
Yeah, pretty thorough there. That was a lot of
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me and share your experiences. And you have amazing resources that both you and your wife collected.
Yeah.
So, you know, like I said, I don't think I have any other questions, but if you're comfortable with signing the consent form, if there's anything you want me to cut or take off the record, I'm happy to do that. Then
I don't think I'll get hung for anything.
no, I don't think so either. I think you're pretty clean here. But all right, well, I'll go ahead and stop the recorder then.
Okay.
I'll stop this one here.